How's it going, wheelers? Welcome back. Today's video is going to be a big one. So I've had CTGP for 3, maybe 4 years, and I've been playing it consistently. I've picked up an interest in custom tracks, and the most popular distribution, CTGP, is currently unrivaled, and no other pack can really catch on to its immense success. But technically speaking, CTGP's main goal is to add 200 new tracks to the game. Does CTGP have the best tracks of any pack? Let's talk about it. I wanted to discuss the tracks because in my opinion there are some great ones, but also a few tracks that should definitely be reconsidered. So I'm going to be doing a ranking of all 218 custom tracks in CTGP. Here's how it's going to work. I'm going to be operating on the assumption that everyone watching this video right now has played these tracks. I'll still show footage if you haven't or need a refresher, but so this video isn't a day long, I'm only going to be discussing the main strengths and problems. My ranking system will be the same as my latest custom track review, maybe a little harsher since these are considered the best tracks. And one last thing to note, this is just my opinion coming from someone who plays this game competitively, but makes tracks as well. There will definitely be tracks on this list that will confuse you, but this video was made for fun and maybe a little discussion. I didn't create it to bash creators or their abilities, I just want to focus on the tracks themselves. Anyways, let's rank some tracks. At number 218, we have Mushroom Peaks, released by Mr. Bean 35000 VR, and Chatters, currently in version RC5. Yep, Peaks is at the bottom. I've heard a lot of people make a case for keeping this in the pack, and I usually tune it out, but sometimes I listen. I mean, come on. The track has dated texturing, is non-intuitive to beginners, requires precise inputs just so you don't fall off the track, has very dated design issues, and is so long, oh my god. Sure, I have respect for this track, but I just don't think this should be in the pack anymore. As far as I am aware, the current reasoning for Bean keeping this in the pack is that it gets picked often and it wouldn't make sense to remove it. Most people I know either pick it for the meme or because they try and cheese free wins. The design just doesn't hold up, and I found the reason as to why Ferv's remake isn't in the pack. A lot of unnecessary boost panels and annoying shortcuts makes the track feel a lot worse than the current version of Peaks. What? A lot worse? The boost panels are mostly in the same spot, and they were placed on the slower route anyway, and as far as I can tell there are no annoying shortcuts that weren't already there in the original. I'm not even advocating that hard for Mushroom Mountain in the pack because it still has the same problematic mushroom section, but at least it's 2 laps, visually appealing, and drives a little better. Sorry, I just had to air that out. I get there are people that like the track and it would bum them out to remove it, but you also have to consider the players who are tired of the track constantly being played, otherwise known as myself, and the newer demographic who could be pushed away by tracks like these. Picture you're a new player and in Worldwides you are constantly barraged by tracks like these that you have no clue how to play. It wouldn't be fun and could probably push them away from playing the rest of the tracks, which would blow, but I should move on before I start screaming. At number 217, we have Six King Labyrinth by Mr. Bean 35000 VR and Chatters, currently in version beta. Don't worry, Insenia Castle is not the next track in the list. But let's focus on this one. I think the premise of opening up new paths over time is interesting, but the way that Insenia Castle approached it is so much better and less convoluted than this one. I mean really, what is the point of having so many pathways? This is not a track, this is a maze and a task to get through. The track is very glitchy and doesn't function well. I just don't get enjoyment out of playing this. So many cannons, weird turns, Bean corners. Why, after so many years, does this track remain in the pack, and why does Bean refuse to update it as well? That confuses me so much. Like, he doesn't want the track to function well? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, most of my criticisms carry over. If this track is still in the pack for the same reason as Peaks, well, think of the newcomers who will see tracks like these and want to stop playing the pack, or some of the players who have stuck around and have grown tired of the track. Whatever, moving on. At number 216, we have Haunted Woods, released by Thondom, currently in version 1.2. As this track gets older and older, my questioning of why it's still in the pack begins to grow. I don't doubt this could be considered impressive by 2011 standards, but this track does not have a good design. Too many tight turns, along with, let's be honest, ugly texturing. The golden mushroom shortcut I'm not a fan of either, and the track feels a little too long. I'm not sure even a beautiful remake to make this functional would be favorable, honestly. I think it might be for the best if this track just gets left behind for a track that is fun to drive and looks good. At number 215, we have ASDF Course, released by Gilmon 35249 VR, currently in version RC1. As funny as I find the idea of this being in the pack in 2020, I find it hard for really anyone to advocate for this track to stay in at this point. The track is a triangle, which means all the turns are tight, the texturing isn't pleasant, and it's painfully boring. I have respect for the track, but I cannot really see a justification to leave it in. At least it's functional. At number 214, we have Caladay Desert, released by Bjorn, currently version RC6. This track isn't that fun to drive. It's rather boring, it's pretty long, and it's awkward to drive in quite a few sections, like the pyramids and the last trick ramp wall thing, definitely. The textures are to not great, and the background elements are lackluster. At number 213, we have Kirio Raceway, released by Super Blooper Kirio, currently in version 4.1. I'm surprised this is still in the pack, to be honest. I don't really hate it like some of the other tracks down here, but there's so many design problems with the track, especially the ending of the loop section. Like, the track looks okay, maybe a little worse than okay, but it's crazy how it hasn't been replaced yet, considering how needlessly difficult it is to drive at some points. At number 212, we have Hell Pyramid, released by Spy Kid, currently version 1.1. This track has an interesting premise, but I am not all too interested because of the dated design and some of the layout decisions, like the completely blind turn, for example, that isn't really intuitive, or the huge open space at the start that doesn't really make any sense. I just don't get a lot of enjoyment when I drive this track. It's got too many slow tricks and, in my opinion, lame textures, and I honestly find it a little boring. At number 211, we have Bayside Boulevard, released by Spy Kid, currently in version 1.0. The theme and texturing is pretty good, but geez, this track is so cramped. This needed an upscale or something because there are so many tight turns or just small rooms in general. I'm also not a fan of the two completely different paths, and those last turns are very unsatisfying to make. I'm not a fan of the trick ramps either. This track could have been a lot better. At number 210, we have Resway 2, released by Trent Rez and Jeff, currently in version 2.2. This track doesn't have many redeemable qualities other than the fact that you can drive most of it. The ramp part can be very inconsistent and is not fun to drive, and some of the turns are way too tight. This track just does not interest me in the slightest. At number 209, we have Galaxy Base, released by Spy Kid, currently in version 2.0. Yeah, I'm not really a fan of the design, or the textures, or the theme really, or how it drives. Like, none of it is terrible, but I don't really like anything here per se. It works, it's drivable, but I just don't like it. At number 208, we have Star Slope, released by Iger Zebra 4 and Torin, currently in version 1.2. This track is visually stunning, and oh my god, why does it drive so bad? Was this remake playtested once during development? Why are the wavy paths a thing? Why? It just isn't fun to drive, and it hurts that the visuals are so good because it's clear that a lot of time was put into it, but I just don't want to play this track. I don't enjoy driving any of it. Why couldn't it stay hidden? Sorry for being so harsh, I was just playing it up, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of this one. At number 207, we have Dream Old Cloudway, released by Spy Kid, currently in version 2.3. I just don't like the track all too much. Too many odd design choices, and it doesn't really flow well. I'm not a fan of any of the trick ramps or pads, and the choices like going through the floor, the Koopa Cape zappers on the ground, and the weird cloud turns along with narrow roads makes this not all too fun to drive. It looks okay and has an interesting theme, but I don't enjoy driving it. At number 206, we have SNES Koopa Beach 2, released by Maxi Copetti, currently version RC2. I don't enjoy playing this one. It's a good port, but I'm not a fan of the original design at all. I just think it's really boring. I feel bad since Mac didn't really do anything wrong, but still, I think this should be removed. At number 205, we have Crystal Dungeon, released by Spy Kid, currently in version 3.11. I never really enjoyed playing this track. It would always get picked when I played custom tracks competitively, and I always got annoyed. Putting the bias aside though, I think its layout shines in certain sections and severely decreases in others, like the bad starting, the good straight afterwards, the other bad 180-degree turn, and the strange mushroom ending. It also has meh visuals and definitely feels dated. At least the theming is interesting. At number 204, we have Comet Starbay, released by Wii Luigi, currently in version 1.44. I don't think this track is outright terrible. This has interesting ideas and can be cool to race on at some points, but those points are very limited. This is mostly confusing texturing, roads that are too bumpy, weird layout choices, and nothing of interest in the background either. The road gets too small in some sections as well. Overall, not the greatest. At number 203, we have Green Park, released by Charon, currently version 2.8a. While there isn't anything necessarily terrible about this track, there's not a lot you can call good, at least for me personally. Charon definitely improved later along his track creating life, and this is just no longer a well-designed course. I don't like the texturing or the design, I'm not really a fan of the fast change humps, I think the theme is meh, and the shortcuts aren't really that great. It's still more of a track you can race on than others, but still, I think the time is up for this track to remain in CTGP. At number 202, we have Misty Ruins, released by Vulcanist 2, currently in version 1.0. I'm not sure what purpose this track serves staying in the pack other than being one of the few that was in Rate That Custom Track. The appeal was gone long ago, and this has not aged well. The design just isn't that great with how it starts, that impossible shortcut, the two cannons. It is just not that fun to drive. The theme isn't really there either. The textures are alright, I guess, but I wouldn't even try and remake this track since the theme isn't that interesting, and the design doesn't really have a lot of potential. I think it's time we let go of this track. At number 201, we have Yoshi Lagoon, released by Yoshiller and Such T93A, currently version 1.2. I don't like driving this track. If you haven't noticed already, the road is almost completely flat except for one ramp, and when a track has to incorporate road and pathways just to create a minimap design, then you know the track is going to have some unnecessary paths, and this one certainly does. It's just not fun to drive. I don't think most people would really care that it is in the shape of a Yoshi, but yeah, I don't really like the course. At number 200, we have Lava Road, released by Fire Luigi, Caron, and Maxi Copetti, currently in version RC2. I mean, this track looks fine, I guess, but the design is flawed, at least the version currently in CTGP. Fire gazers that randomly appear through the ground, unclear ramps that go way too high, lots of weird and unnecessary turns and jump pads. I'm just not a fan. What I do like, however, is Renegade Sierra's remake that cleaned the track up, gave it a new look, and made it play a whole lot better. This version should definitely be replaced. At number 199, we have Red Loop, made by Yellow Yoshi and currently in version 1.91. While it looks nice for a track that was actually made in 2012, it's needlessly difficult. It is just not fun to drive because it's so hard and the rest of the design doesn't make up for it. I think this should be removed because I don't think there are many people that enjoy playing this track. At number 198, we have Niverbia, released by Spy Kid, currently in version 1.31. I feel like there are way too many design issues with this track to really be enjoyable. There are slow ramps you're supposed to skip over, massive obstacles in the middle of the road, and unsmooth turns. I just don't like playing this track, and the visuals don't save it. The update improves the track, but doesn't do enough in my opinion. At number 197, we have Winter Paradise, released by Spy Kid, and Wii Luigi, currently in version 1.3. I personally feel like this track is very lackluster and doesn't have a strong theme or design to it. It's incredibly forgettable and not that fun to drive in my opinion. Not a big fan of this one. At number 196, we have N64 Yoshi Valley, released by Zillspaz, currently version beta 2. I just don't really enjoy playing this track all too much. The design doesn't work in Mario Kart Wii in my opinion, it's too long. Also, I think the parts with the spinies are a little too difficult, like the number could definitely be halved and still introduce a challenge to the racer, but yeah, not a big fan. I just don't think a Yoshi Valley remake will work well in Mario Kart. Maybe the Wii U version of a port would make a lot more sense, but still, I don't think it would be perfect. At number 195, we have Celestial Ruins, released by Chaos Shadow 23, currently in version 1.0. This track just feels unnecessary to still have, taking up a slot considering we also have Abyssal Ruins at the pack, which is very similar. Like, it's not bad, but it's not the most fun to drive for the majority of the track, especially the beginning, and also doesn't look that great visually. It just feels pointless to keep this in the pack to me personally. At number 194, we have Headlong Skyway, released by BC Photon, Mega Kart 69, and Chaos Shadow 23, currently version 2.2. I've grown very tired of the design here. I don't think the track is that terrible, it's just not fun to drive, and there's not really any background elements or a good theming here either in my opinion. This honestly feels like a meh filler to CTGP, which I don't think is necessary in the current year to have in the pack. Like, the idea of having a pentagram shaped track isn't that interesting anymore, so the novelty of the track is gone. To me, it doesn't really race like a track. At number 193, we have DS Figure 8 Circuit, released by Maxi Copetti, currently in version RC1. I love how there are 3 separate remakes of this track on the wiki. This is just not necessary to include in CTGP. It's not like we have every DS track in it right now anyway. DS Rainbow Road isn't in here. Whatever, I guess it looks nice, but it is incredibly boring to drive. It's a good port, I guess, but Mac didn't have a lot to work with. At number 192, we have DKR Ancient Lake, released by DJ Logay and Mewtwo 2000, currently version 2.0. I just don't really understand why this is still in the pack. It works as a track, I guess, but I don't think people would want this over a modern track. It's not the creator's fault, but I just don't find this that fun to play, and I don't think it'd give off good races either. At number 191, we have GCN Mushroom City, released by Torn, currently in version 0.1. It's a good port of the original, but I hate the original. It doesn't flow well and is annoying to play. Does it work as a track? Sure. Does it look great? Sure. Is it drivable? Yes, but I don't enjoy playing it. At number 190, we have Sadix Twinkle Circuit, released by Agar Zebra 4, currently in version 2.0. How do I put this? This track is very boring. I'll be honest, I don't get why this is still in the pack. Like, the visuals are great with the animated scenery and the textures, but the design is so long and stretched out, and it really doesn't change all that much. Super long straightaways are not my favorite, and this track doesn't change visually for the whole 30 minutes. This also has absolutely no shortcuts. This just doesn't really feel like a track, to be honest, but more of a task. It can be a little fun to drive, but most of the time I just don't enjoy playing it. At number 189, we have SNES Donut Plains 2, released by Nile Black, Lex Orange, and Kanto Epic, currently in version 1.1. I think most SNES tracks come out a little boring when turned into custom tracks, and this is no exception, but this also has a design that isn't great, with some turns feeling a little too tight. This track is also painfully forgettable. I think I've only played this once in a CT Worldwide after years of playing this pack. At number 188, we have Sandcastle Park, released by Spy Kid and Wii Master 35000 VR, currently in version 1.1. I'm not a fan of this track. The design is and the visuals really lower this track. It just looks like a very amateur texture job, and there are no background elements. I just don't think it's that fun to race on, and I feel like this should definitely be replaced. At number 187, we have Slot Circuit, released by Jeff, currently on version 1.11. I think this track drags on for way too long. The idea of a slot car circuit theme isn't a bad idea by any means, but this design is so long and the visuals barely change at all. I don't really enjoy driving on the track. At number 186, we have Desktop Dash, released by Mr. E99, currently in version 1.2. Not a fan of this one. This is really good theming and the textures make sense, but it's really hard to pull off a real life track that is good theming and also plays well. There's just too many things going on in this track. It's not clear where you're supposed to go. A track with a road is easy to follow, this just has so much going on. The turns are really tight, there's an abundance of them, and it ends with Coconut Mall cars. Oh, how I hate Coconut Mall cars. Once you get the hang of it, the track is alright, still too difficult and non-intuitive. This is a miss for Mr. E. At number 185, we have Sunset Circuit, released by Volcanist 2 and Natney, currently in version 2.1. These types of tracks I don't enjoy playing, heavy speed mods and simple designs. I'm just not a fan. The visuals are good, but I don't like the original design. At number 184, we have Delfino Island, released by Volcanist 2, currently version 3.4. There's too many inconsistencies and weird design choices to call it a good track. Like the two boost panels at the start to skip all the turns streamless anyway, the weird downhill section you shoot over, and the boardwalk section turns in strange spots with unnecessary pathways, along with annoying boost pads and trick ramps. I'm just not a huge fan. At number 183, we have GCN Rainbow Road, released by Redefine Talk, currently version 1.2. My main problem with this version that this replaced was that it was too long, reaching 4 minutes, and this version is like the exact same in my eyes. I just don't want to spend 4 minutes on the same track. I know some people do, but I have never gotten the urge to play this just because of the sheer length of the whole track. Sure, it looks nicer and you can trick on the cannon and it's a little smoother to drive, I don't know. I still don't want to play this all that much. If it were 2 laps, this would probably be an 8 or higher, even 1 lap, but that might just be a personal thing for me. At number 182, we have N64 Toad's Turnpike, released by Torin, currently in version RC3. This track is painfully long and boring to drive. Like, it's a good port with visuals that I wouldn't say are amazing, but are, you know, good enough. I just don't enjoy playing this track, and I think a lot of people agree. I saw a Wii U version made into a custom track, and it's definitely better than this. I feel like that version could look a little better, but I would honestly prefer it to this version, CTGP. At number 181, we have Seasonal Circuit, released by Mr. Bunchins X11 T7, currently in version RC1. I'm just not a fan of the design, really. I think there isn't really anything special to it, and it's not that fun to drive. I like the theming, and that's why I think Baron Love Life and T-Pose's remake should definitely replace it in the pack because it looks and plays so much better. At number 180, we have DK Ruins, released by Wexos, currently a version RC1. This is a port of 3DS DK's Jungle. This isn't a bad port, far from it. I just don't like DK's Jungle that much. I mean, it plays better here than on the 3DS and Wii U in my opinion, but I'm still not a fan. This probably isn't the best port to use either. I'd say Skippers is probably the best out of all 5 of them. At number 179, we have Wario Shipwreck, released by Atlas, currently in version 1.97. This is a port of 3DS Wario Shipyard, and I didn't like the track on the 3DS, and I think it plays even worse on the Wii, so I don't like the track. Good port, sure, but I don't like the design. At number 178, we have GCN Baby Park, released by Maxi Copetti, currently in version 1.1. It's Baby Park. This is visually impressive and can be fun to play, but it's Baby Park, and red shells go over walls. I don't like that. At number 177, we have Insignia Castle, released by Mr. Bean 35000 VR, and Chatters, currently version RC 1.1. This is definitely Mr. Bean's best custom track, and honestly I don't think it's all that bad. It definitely has issues though. The idea here is interesting, I just find the track is a little too long and can't remain interesting for the duration of the course. You can definitely tell that it is becoming a dated track as well with the textures. I also think that some sections aren't all that intuitive, mainly the ramp at the end where the platform inexplicably disappears for no reason, so a person new to the track will probably fall off there without knowing. I would love to see a remake of this track to make it more interesting, concise, and visually appealing, because I think the idea definitely has potential. At 176, we have Melting Magma Melee, released by SuchT93A, currently in version 1.1. It looks great and has a wonderful theme, but the drivability is very low here. I do not enjoy playing it. Like all tracks in CTGP, it works, I guess, but it's not fun to drive. I never really want to play it. At number 175, we have Item Fireland, released by Kichi1996, currently in version 1.1a. The visuals here, along with the theming, is pretty good, but there are a few too many questionable design choices, like the turn at the start feels awkward to drive, and the very short cannon followed by the tunnel in the air I don't really understand, and then jumping into the lava I'm not a huge fan of. This just feels a little too dated and doesn't drive the best. At number 174, we have N64 Moo Farm, released by YoshiDude4 and Ermelber, currently version 1.1. I also think this is sort of a meh port. Like, the visuals are good enough, I guess, but this track is rather boring and also way too bumpy to be fun to drive. I'll blame the original design a little bit for the boring part, but the fact that it's so bumpy could have been fixed with Sticky Road. At number 173, we have GBA Rainbow Road, released by KOShadow23, currently in version 1.2. It's a meh port, meh designs, meh textures. It works as a track and can give interesting races, but while I don't hate the track, I also don't really enjoy it at all either. At number 172, we have Candy Coaster, released by Spy Kid, currently in version 2.2. This has good theming, with all of its elements resembling a candy theme. The textures are also smart for the track. It's alright, but most of the track isn't that fun to drive, mainly the ramps. A remake of this track would be cool. At number 171, we have GBA Sunset Wilds, released by KOShadow23, currently in version 1.1. As a port, this looks actually really good. Probably better than the other GBA ports, but this also has major design issues, I feel like. I'm not a fan of the boost panel trick sections or how the footprints in the ground function. Also, mostly every turn is tight, so it's hard to drive in some sections. Also, no shortcuts really on here, except for the last one that you basically always have to go for. I'd prefer if this wasn't in the pack. At number 170, we have DS Wario Stadium, released by Zillaspaz, currently in version 1.1b. This is an alright port, but I've never really liked the design in the original game. I also don't think the textures are that interesting. I don't think it drives well here. And I also hate the version in Mario Kart 8, so I'm probably never going to like the track no matter what. At number 169, we have SNES Choco Island 2 by Zillaspaz, currently in version 1.1c easy. This track is a definition of eh. Like, sure, it's a working track and it's ported alright, but like, eh. I don't really care. I think there's too many ramps and it's not that interesting of a layout. At number 168, we have Sunset Ridge, released by Vulcanus 2 and Big Auto 2, currently version RC3. I admit it's a good track for 2011 and 2012 standards, but it hasn't aged well over the years. I don't really care for the design or the texturing that much, and I honestly forget this is in the pack quite often. Sure, the track works, but the theming is rather boring, and the track isn't all too fun to drive. The mushrooms can be very difficult, and the track as a whole is too long. At number 167, we have Heart of China, released by Wing Catman, currently version 2.0.3. As glad as I am that this is the new version, and as much as it has improved, I still don't think this is a very strong track. I never got the hang of the older version, and while this one is much easier to grasp and nicer to drive, it is still far from intuitive and very confusing to a beginner. Some design choices don't make sense, sometimes an off-road texture is still drivable, sometimes you can trick on nothing, and while the exploration is the selling point of the track, it can also cause more confusion to players trying to race. At number 166, we have SNES Donut Plains 1, released by Zillaspaz, currently in version 1.0. Flat and boring. A SNES port. I just don't really care about the track at all, and I doubt other people really do either. Like, it works, sure, but the fact that it's 5 laps makes it even worse. It's just boring. I don't know. At least it's better than the second one. At number 165, we have N64 Rainbow Road, released by Torn, currently in version 1.1. Yeah, it works, but oh man is it boring. This is the second and final hidden track, and let me say, Bean went 0 on 2 for these. I mean, it works, and thank the Lord it's only one lap, but it's not that fun to drive. While the visuals look nice, they don't change throughout the duration of the course. If we need an N64 Rainbow Road, I'd recommend replacing this with Skipper's version, as his is a lot more interesting design-wise and visually. At number 164, we have SNES Rainbow Road 4, released by Nile Black, currently version 1.2. While the design is alright, the textures definitely get a little straining on the eyes after a while. Bear and CPL's remake should definitely replace this. At number 163, we have DS Cheap Cheap Beach, released by Super Smash 8, currently in version 1.3. I never liked this track on the DS. It's an alright port, but it's a little dated, and yeah, I'm still not a fan of the design. I just think it's lacking. I'd prefer to see ZPL and Jasper's port, as they made it look phenomenal visually, and they took some creative liberties with the design too. At number 162, we have Volcanic Skyway 2, released by Big Auto 2, currently in version 2.3. While it's a good idea and theme, you could tell it's dated and that it was a 2010 or 2011 track. I don't think it's all that great, the texturing is a little bland, and the age really shows. The design itself is alright, but sections like the tight turn that is completely blind to new players aren't the best. At number 161, we have Aquania, released by Spy Kid, currently in version 1.0. The layout is okay, not amazing by any means, but it flows pretty good. Not a huge fan of the cannon at the end though, some of the ramps are weird and I don't like how it's textured. The water everywhere looks like TV static at points and I'm not a huge fan. Also the background is rather boring. At number 160, we have GBA Luigi Circuit, released by Zillspaz, currently in version 1.01. A good port that looks nice, I just don't like the original design. The turns are very tight, and the track is a little too long to be that interesting. At number 159, we have Snowy Circuit 2, released by Punis, currently in version 2.2. I feel like this track is trying to be something it's not. It seems like Punis tried making this interesting to drive with the excessive amount of turns, and what it turns into is just kind of a lackluster track in terms of amusement, because all it really is just a bunch of turns over and over again, while not that much change in scenery. This track just feels too long, but it is fun to drive at times and looks alright visually for a 2012 track, technically 2011 track. At number 158, we have Flowery Greenhouse, released by Sneaky, currently in version 1.0. This might be a shock for you guys considering I put a Sneaky track this low, but I do have quite a few issues with it. The track looks great and has a wonderful theme to it, but there are quite a number of design problems here. First off, the pipe is hard to drive, and then the grass part after has an incredibly easy shortcut, and then there's the weird grass section going up and the tedious half-pipe section afterwards. Honestly, I would love to see a complete redesign revolving around the theme portrayed here, but in its current state, the track is not that fun to drive. Definitely one of Sneaky's weaker efforts. At number 157, we have Bowser's Fiery Fortress, released by Wexos and Atlas, currently in version 1.1b. This is a port of 3DS Bowser's Castle, and I just don't think it works well in the game. I didn't really like the original, and this one just plays awkwardly for the majority of the course. At number 156, we have N64 Royal Raceway, released by Bayolets and Luigi M, currently in version 2.1. It's a good port, I guess, but the visuals are a little bland, and the track is very long considering how boring the theming and the background elements are. I would love to see a take on the Mario Kart 8 version, or at least a remake using the proportions from that game, rather than the longer Nintendo 64 version. At number 155, we have Mansion of Madness, released by Such T93A, currently in version 1.2 Alt 1. There's obviously been a lot of work put into the track to make it look good and play well, but I am not a fan of how it drives, at least in most sections. See, you always have to consider design, because no matter how good a track looks or how much time you put into it, if your design isn't working, then the track isn't gonna work. I think there's too much twisting road that isn't really fun to drive, especially at the end, and other smaller sections individually can feel a bit of a hassle. The rest of the track though is pretty good, just the drivability issues need to be fixed. At number 154, we have Summer Starville, released by Spy Kid, currently in version 1.1. This track plays alright in some sections, but I just feel like most of the track is made up of poor design choices. Like, I'm not a fan of the starting area or the ending, and that makes up almost all of the track. The theme is a little bland as well. The track itself I could race on, but I never really want to. I could see a remake be alright, but even then the theming would still be kind of meh, so I don't know. At number 153, we have SNES Bowser Castle 1, released by Chaos Shadow 23, currently in version 1.0. Good port once again with great visuals, but the design houses long straightaways, and that's it. Don't think it's all too unnecessary to include the CTGP, if I'll be honest. At number 152, we have Lakeside Hill, released by Spy Kid, currently in version 2.0. I have really no interest in this track. It's good, I guess, it looks alright, it plays but not the best. Not too much else to say. There's some design choices I don't admire, like the narrow entrance to the bridge, the massive turns, and the slow ramps, but it races well enough, I guess. I don't know. At number 151, we have Shy Guys Market, released by Atlas, currently in version 2.0b. Shy Guy Market is a port of 3DS Shy Guy Bazaar. While this is a good port, I just don't really care about the original, and I'm not really a fan of its design. Even though it's original, I'm not too huge on the theming either, so yeah, I don't really like playing this one. At number 150, we have Halado Mountain, released by Chaos Shadow 23 and Renegade Sierra, currently in version 1.3. While yes, this certainly makes the original Halado Mountain look much nicer and is also an interesting take on the theme, I'm not all too interested in the track. Most of my issues are tied to the design choices, like the blind turn and how tight some of the other turns are. I'm not a fan of the whole layout in general. It does drastically improve upon the original, but honestly I'm not sure if any sort of remake will make me like the track until bigger changes to the design are made, to which at that point you might as well be making a completely different track. At number 149, we have Ice Peak Mountain, released by 4TL Patty, Florian, and Connie, currently in version 1.1. While this track looks good and has a nice theme, it has design issues. The starting area can be a bit of a mess, the house section can be difficult to drive when it shouldn't be, and I'm not a fan of the drop-off section into the colored room. I just don't think it flows well between section to section. It works as a track for sure, it's just not all that fun to drive. At number 148, we have SNES Mario Circuit 1, released by MKWii, currently in version 1.1. It's just kinda a good port and all, but definitely one of the more boring designs, and I also think ZBL's port is a lot more interesting visually, so this one is not my favorite. At number 147, we have Undiscovered Off Limit, released by Kichi 1996, currently in version 1.2. While this track does look good visually, I'm not really a fan of the design in most sections. It's not terrible, but going through the walls, the boost panel Koopa Troopa rooms, and the trickable floor aren't all too enjoyable to drive, though I don't think it's a terrible track, I just don't really care about it. At number 146, we have GBA Riverside Park, made by Chaos23, currently in version 2.1. Good port, plays like the original, looks nice, etc, etc. I personally feel like this is just a much worse version of Lakeside Park, so it is much lower. It feels kind of unnecessary to have in the pack in my opinion. The shortcuts cut way too much off and the turns are too tight. At number 145, we have Canyon Run, released by Bread and Manga, currently in version 1.0. This has nice visuals, really capturing the high up and warm theme, and it's an interesting track. I'm very happy the update with the sticky road was put in the pack, but I'm still not a huge fan of the layout with all the jumps. At number 144, we have Retro Raceway, released by Wii Master 35000 VR, Bjorn, and Luigi M, currently in version RC2. The first word that comes to my mind when I think of this track is It's alright, it plays like a track, but it's a little bumpy and some turns are too tight. It's just an track, and I don't think it's really necessary to keep in CTGP, but that's just me. At number 143, we have Kooky Village, released by Waluigi, Spy Kid, and Such T93A, currently in version 1.3. I mean, it's got good theming, a simple nice layout, good shortcuts, but it's not all that interesting honestly. Like, I don't think this track is bad at all, but I'm never dying to play it. The 180-degree turn especially is not that fun to drive, and the amount of boost panels can be seen as excessive. Not a bad track, but there's not a ton of positives to it. At number 142, we have Fishtom Island, released by Big Auto 2, currently in version 6.0. Considering it's a 2011 track, it's really good, and I might even consider it to be ahead of its time, but it's been years of this being in CTGP, and most people, myself included, have probably gotten a little tired of it since it's a very simple design with a few too many issues. The positives are it has surprisingly good scenery, it drives alright and has a good theme, but the few design choices like the tight turns at the start, the long and slow fall right after, and the empty and long boardwalk lower the enjoyment of this track a little bit. Also, the texturing definitely shows how dated the track has become. I think at this point Bean should consider replacing the track with Bladestorm and Jasper's remake, since that track is amazing. It manages to feel like the version while increasing its drivability and interest throughout the track visually. At number 141, we have GBA Broken Pier, released by Chaos23, currently in version 4.1.1. This was a strange update to put in the newest pack, considering some of the other tracks missing the latest versions, not getting as much attention. I mean, it's improved design-wise, but I just don't like the visuals all too much compared to the last version. It is much easier to play and more intuitive to a beginner, so it is improved. I just don't think it's amazing. At number 140, we have DS TikTok Clock, made by Maxi Copetti, currently version beta 2. Good port, doesn't do it for me. It's just a little boring with not really any obstacles. I would love to see Talk's 2020 version as it's fully functional and would spice up the track a lot. At number 139, we have N64 Luigi Raceway, released by Zillspaz, currently in version 1.0. Zill is good at porting, but this just isn't that interesting of a layout. Like all of Nintendo's tracks work, but I never really find myself wanting to play this. Also, the latest version looks a lot better, so if I were Bean, I would definitely update the pack to let version 2.0 in. At number 138, we have GBA Beach Circuit, released by Chaos23, currently in version 1.1. Good port, design, sometimes fun to race on, but can be a little boring. Game Boy Advance tracks didn't really have the best design. At number 137, we have Rockside River, released by Earl Melber, currently in version 2.2 hotfix. I think we can officially label this the most forgettable track that is currently in CTGP. I always forget it is here, but is it that bad? Not really, it's just boring honestly. Like, there are a lot of objects on the track, but it's so small with boring visuals, It doesn't look bad, but it's not that interesting. I'm not really sure why it's still in the pack. The update doesn't really fix it either. At number 136, we have SNES Ghost Valley 1, released by Zillospace, currently in version 1.01. It's alright. It has a simple design, and you need some of those in any Mario Kart game, but it's not the most fun to drive, and I feel like the spacing gets a little tight, especially around the patch of off-road. The darker wood being off-road isn't exactly clear. It's still alright. At number 135, we have Desert Castle Raceway by LGMB, currently in version 1.5. In my opinion, this is definitely one of LGMB's weaker efforts. Without counting his test track, this is probably my least favorite of his, to be honest, but it's also one of his older tracks. Does it make this track bad? Of course not. LGMB is very talented, but there's a few design choices to this track that I do not admire. It becomes unfun to drive in some sections because of how bumpy it is, especially at the start. It also has a few texturing issues. There's also the unsmooth bridge, which is a little annoying to get through, and the castle section isn't very intuitive for two reasons. The split path with the off-road and the regular road is presented to you very fast on the first run and can be very confusing. And all the turns on the roof of the castle don't really flow well, especially the very tight 180-degree ending. Other than that though, I like some of the ideas, the scenery and theming, and the background elements of the track. At number 134, we have Castle of Time, released by Mega Kart 69, currently in version 1.7. This track has some interesting concepts and nice ideas, good theming and a nice layout, but the latest version of the track is a lot better in terms of texturing and changes, and improves upon a few of the design choices. It also added more interesting background elements. This version is decent, but that version is much better. This is a tad boring visually compared to that. Also, this track is massive and I think it should be one lap. At number 133, we have GBA Ribbon Road, released by Chaos Shadow 23, currently in version 1.2. Good port, not a huge fan of the track. I don't think it drives well, and nothing saves it from being an track in my eyes. I'm just waiting for the Wii U version to be put in. At number 132, we have GP Mario Beach, released by Super Mario 64 DS and DJ Loge, currently in version 2.0 Alpha 1 Hotfix 2. Honestly, the track isn't that bad. It can be pretty fun to drive. I'm just becoming increasingly tired of this track being constantly played when it's not that amazing. It looks great and drives well enough, and the speed mod makes things interesting, but yeah, not all too fond of it as much anymore. At number 131, we have Rosalina's Snow World, released by Mr. E99 and Skipper93653, currently in version 1.0. This is a port of 3DS Rosalina's Ice World, and it's a good port. I just don't like the design that much and don't think it works well on the Wii. I didn't think it worked well on the 3DS either. The visuals are good though. At number 130, we have Melody Sanctum, released by Spy Kid, currently in version 1.1. Great theming and objects here. The track is interesting, until you go around it once, and then you have to do it again, and then you're finally done. This course is so long, so incredibly long. It does not have a right to be this long. I don't want to race on the same course for 4 whole minutes. Make this 2 laps. You can even make it 1 lap. I don't care. 3 laps is way too long. Also, some of the drivability is an issue. Mostly the spiral is not that smooth to drive, and while the textures are good, a visual enhancement could improve upon it. At number 129, we have N64 Banshee Boardwalk, released by Zillospace, currently in version 1.0. This retro track, like all the others, is a good port, but even though I like the original, I'm not a fan of how this track plays in Mario Kart Wii. Even though version 1.1 of this with the texture overhaul looks much better, I would probably suggest being uses ZBL's version since it not only looks better but takes some design changes that make the track a little more interesting. I honestly just get a little bored playing this with the long straightaways and not much deviation through the whole track. At number 128, we have Sky Grove, released by Sneaky, currently in version 1.3. This is also a track that I feel is just meh for Sneaky standards. I'm not all too enthralled by the design, and while the track still looks good, I don't think the visuals are amazing. I'm sad to say this feels like a filler track even though Sneaky made it, so a Sneaky filler? I don't know. I don't like the shortcuts, and sometimes the ramps or mushrooms are inconsistent. Not terrible, but not really that interesting either. At number 127, we have N64 Frat Race Snowland, released by Zillospace, currently in version 1.0. Good port, but the original design was kinda meh. It didn't deviate a lot in the design or visuals. Most N64 tracks didn't, I guess. At number 126, we have DSDK Pass, released by Quadjig99 and YoshiDude4, currently in version 1.0. It's a good port, it resembles the original track well, but I was never hugely in love with the original's design, and those same concerns transfer over here. Some of the hills can be very bumpy. At number 125, we have Mushroom Island, released by Inkling 35,000 VR and Sneaky, currently in version 1.2. Well, it's good for a mushroom track. I do think this remake looks nice and it plays like the original does, which is good, but I just don't really care for the design, honestly. I don't think this is really that remarkable, especially since Sneaky had a hand in creating it. It looks good, but it's a mushroom track that just doesn't really interest me. Do I know how to fix it? Not really. The design does make sense, but it feels like most of the track is just mushrooms. At number 124, we have DKR Jungle Falls, released by Mr. Koi Koi, MU2 2000, currently version 2.0. Now this track is much better than DKR Ancient Lake, while still capturing that simplistic feel. It flows well from section to section with good enough texturing and theming. It works much better as a track than Ancient Lake. While still not the most interesting and not the best driving wise, I would much rather play this. At number 123, we have Ice Cream Sweetland, released by Spy Kid and Ermelber, currently in version 2.0. I think the track is alright with a decent design. It has a good theme, background elements, and objects. I still think there are a few design issues like the tight turns and being able to skip one of them easily, and the big section with all the obstacles that doesn't feel fun to drive. But I think the main issue is the dated texturing. Also, the finish line being where it is causes some issues with where you can finish the track. At number 122, we have SNES Bowser Castle 3, released by Daz Frogization and Talk, currently version 2 alpha. Sorry if I pronounced it wrong. I don't know. This port is fine and looks great. I just don't really enjoy playing the track. I don't think the design from the original is that good, and it's not the most fun to drive. At number 121, we have Oro Metropolis, released by Spy Kid, currently in version 1.2. The key element here is the visuals. The visuals are really nice. The objects and their placement is good, and the layout for the most part is alright, except for a few problems. I'm not a fan of the downhill into the right section, nor am I a fan of the floor you can go right through, and I also don't like the ramp right on the turn since it's unnecessarily difficult to do. At number 120, we have GBA Bowser Castle 1, released by Chaos Shao 23, currently in version 1.1. It's a good port that looks great and drives alright, but answer me this. Do we need to have this retro track in CTGP? Do we have to have every retro in CTGP? Because this just feels like a waste of a slot. Its original design was far from the best. All the tricks at the end aren't that fun to drive, and the track is incredibly short. At number 119, we have Kanoko Cave, released by Iger Zebra 4, Such D93A, and Wing Catman, currently in version 1 beta. This track is alright, but I will probably never really enjoy how a mushroom track drives unless done excellently like Mushroom Gorge. This track has good visuals and theming, but some of the design oversights are a little disappointing, like the fact that you can skip most of the turns just from the mushrooms, and that one row of them being super hard to make sometimes for no reason. At number 118, we have DS Shroom Ridge, released by Sneaky, currently in version 1.1. This is a great port, but I hate it. Now hold on, let me explain. So I don't like Moonview Highway. I think the fact that you are at risk of getting hit by a car at any point on the track is not that fun. But the design is smart because you only have to turn on the right side of the road a few times, and it also has good and interesting straightaways. This has way too many turns, and at points feels like getting hit by a car is inevitable. It makes sense. I know this is supposed to be a difficult course, but the amount of turns, especially on the right side of the road, is a little annoying. But this port is beautifully done. Obviously, since it's a Sneaky track, it looks really nice, and the issues I have are with the original design itself. At number 117, we have GBA Snowland, released by Chaos Shao 23, currently in version 1.1. A good port that looks good. I am not really sure on the design of the original, to be honest. I kind of like it, but at the same time there's a few problems, like how some of the fast pass are kind of easy to do, and so everyone goes for them. I don't know. At number 116, we have Suzuka Circuit, released by LGMB, currently in version 1.1 fix. While I can admit this is a well-made track, I feel like it doesn't work well in Mario Kart Wii. There are a lot of long straightaways that can feel boring, and the one tight turn is incredibly difficult and almost impossible to pull off well. It has really nice visuals, but I think this is one of LGMB's weaker tracks in regards to its design. At number 115, we have GBA Boo Leak, released by Chaos Shao 23, currently in version 3.3. A solid port that feels fine to drive, nothing amazing, has a good shortcut, looks good. Yeah, it's an old retro track. At number 114, we have Desert Mushroom Ruins, released by 4tail Patty and Mr. E99, currently in version 1.1. This track is good, but has its issues. It's a good remake on Mr. E's part, which looks nice and has a great theme to it all, but the issues are relating to drivability. The first problem is the beginning section is a little small, especially the turn into the mushrooms is very tight. Also, there's an unspoken rule where wheeling off the green mushroom can make you fall off, and I feel a track should definitely not have unspoken rules like that. Honestly, despite the mushrooms being in the course name, they feel very forced into the track, and I would probably prefer the track without them. At number 113, we have GBA Sky Garden, released by Chaos Shao 23, currently in version 1.0. Good port, looks alright, yada yada yada. I like the theme of the original and the design is alright. Good shortcuts on the track, though not the most fun to drive. At number 112, we have Nightlife Party, released by Wii Luigi, currently version 2.01. I'm not a huge fan of this track. Some of it is fun to drive, but some of it is also a little annoying for me too. And while I think the theming is interesting and cool with good background elements, I don't like the texturing job, especially on the spilled liquid section with the oil spill that kind of blends in with the ground, so you have to be extra cautious. I'm not a big fan of that. The track is alright other than that though. At number 111, we have N64 Koopa Troopa Beach, released by Zellspaz, currently in version 1.0. While I don't like the design of the original all too much, I will admit this design can give good races against others online. It is sort of fun to drive, though obviously not my favorite. It still has its flaws, but it's not as bad as I initially thought. At number 110, we have Lunar Spaceway, released by Big Auto 2, currently in version 1.0. It's insane how ahead of its time this was. This was made in 2012. A track this grand that has good visuals and a complex dynamic design that was unique and interesting was released in 2012. Now this is still relatively low, yes, because there are a few design flaws with this track. The tight road at the start I'm not a huge fan of. It's rather bumpy and probably a little too long since the interest starts to die down a bit, but I have a lot of respect for the track and some newfound respect for Big Auto for being so amazing at making tracks that early on. At number 109, we have Aquadrome Stage, released by Spykin and Sneaky, currently in version 3.3. Sneaky really saved this track. It looks really good and it cut out most of the unnecessary pathways. It also has really good theming. This track is alright once you get to know it, but the main issue is that it isn't intuitive, really tight turns and blind jumps where you have to know where you're going to not fall behind. Oh, and I don't like how the finish line is right on the turn. At number 108, we have Rock Ridge, released by Mr. Koei and Zellspaz, currently in version 1.21. Rock Ridge is a port of Rock Mountain from the 3DS, and it's a great port that looks interesting visually. I just don't think the design is all too spectacular from the original. Like the huge ramp in the uphill section, I don't really enjoy driving. The track is fine otherwise. At number 107, we have GC and Wario Coliseum, released by MK Dasher, currently in version RC 2.2. I like Wario Coliseum and the support of the track is good, but there are too many questionable design choices from the original to warrant this being a really fun track, like the incredibly long turns, the weird ramps, some of the tight spacing, etc. But I do like the track mostly. At number 106, we have The Rabbit Hole, released by SuchT93A, currently in version RC3 Alt 1. While the theming has potential and the visuals are interesting, I think this could have been made a little better. It has good obstacles and drives alright at times, but I do have a few design issues with the track. I think the texturing could have been improved and the design at certain sections like the spiral leaf part, the bouncy mushroom part, or the long straightaway could have been reconsidered. The starting was interesting, but I'm not sure how much I like it over a normal starting placement. At number 105, we have Wetland Woods, released by Vulcanist 2, currently in version 1.0. This is good for a 2012 track. Since it feels unique and is also simple and enjoyable to race on. What really brings this down though is its bumpiness, which definitely lowers the enjoyment of the whole track. That's really the only issue I see, other than the Shroomless shortcut that I'm not a huge fan of, but otherwise I think the track is decent. At number 104, we have Sea Stadium, released by Zachi, currently in version 2.16.1. While the track looks great and the design isn't all that flawed, I don't really find myself enjoying playing the track, and I'm honestly not too sure why. The 360-degree half-pipe isn't that bad to drive, I just don't feel like this is an amazing track. I guess maybe it's the lack of shortcuts and too many boost panels. At number 103, we have Snowy Circuit, released by Putinus, currently in version 1.6. This track is alright, it looks good enough, and drives pretty well honestly. I used to really love this track back in like 2017, but now I think it's just good and nothing more. I'm not a fan of the heavy off-road, and sometimes the amount of obstacles on the track feel a little excessive, and yeah, it doesn't look the greatest, but I still think the track is alright. At number 102, we have Waluigi's Motocross, released by Wii Master 35000 VR, currently in version 1.5.2. I don't think it's terrible, but I also don't think the track is all that amazing. The theming is alright, although not my favorite, and the design, while mostly driving alright, has a few sections I don't really enjoy because of how bumpy it is, some with turns a little too tight. Well, I don't think it's bad at all, I just don't get a lot of amusement out of it. At number 101, we have Christmas Court, released by Luke Chandler, currently in version 1.0. I like Luke Chandler as a creator, I think he's very good. His visuals are consistent and look nice, and his models are always dynamic and interesting. He has a good amount of obstacles and shortcuts, but there comes a point where it becomes needlessly complicated if you keep adding pathways. That one section where you could go so many different ways doesn't feel all that intuitive. And also, not a huge fan of the room section where you're unable to tell you're about to go down with the ramps. The track could just be simplified a bit. At number 100, we have Cartwood Creek, released by Rich Petty, Tokuku, MKW, and Redefy, currently version 2.2. Finally, the remake was put in the pack, and it's kind of boring, honestly. I mean, it drives well and can be fun sometimes. It just looks a little empty, and I don't think it's absolutely amazing. I'm glad that it's finally in the pack, though. At number 99, we have GCN Daisy Cruiser, released by Super Daisy 55, currently in version 3.2. It's a good theme, an alright design, though at this point, I would probably replace it with Funky Dude 15 Redefying Cottony's remake since it's based off the Mario Kart 7 version, and it looks and plays a little better than this one. There's a few issues with the one currently in CTGP. At number 98, we have Sunset Raceway, released by Ermelber, currently version 3.0. This is an alright track with a pretty good design and texturing, though the theming isn't all that interesting. The track is mostly fun to drive except for the massive turn in the air. I feel like if that was removed, the track would be even better. In its current state, it's a track I don't think about often, but when I play it, I find it to be alright except for that one turn. At number 97, we have Castle of Darkness, released by Mario Kart 69, currently in version 1.4. This track is good, it's got an interesting layout, good shortcuts, and a nice theme. Here are my issues with it. It's got a lot of unnecessary paths that feel out of the way and slower. Along with that, I'm not a huge fan of the boost panel road walls. They feel clunky, and it would probably be better to race on if they were on less of a tilt. This isn't the latest version of the track, but the newest one looks a little better with its visuals. At number 96, we have Boshi Skate Park, released by Luke Chandler, currently in version 1.2. This track is interesting. Some people think it's really good, but I think it's just alright. The track looks nice and has a good theme, but it feels needlessly complicated, especially the straightaway. It's not a lot of fun to play, though it's not terrible. At number 95, we have GCN Yoshi Circuit, released by Ermelber and Yoshi Dude 4, currently in version RC1. While I do like Yoshi Circuit from the GCN Wii U versions, and I guess the DS, I do have to admit there are some flaws with the original design. Sometimes the track turns are way too tight, but I do think this is a good port that drives pretty well regardless. At number 94, we have Dark Matter Shrine, released by Sneaky, currently in version 1.1. I find this to be one of Sneaky's weaker efforts, though a weaker effort by Sneaky is still a pretty good track. This track is stunning visually and has some interesting ideas. The main problem is that it's hard and unfun to drive from the start, up until you make it past the weird ramp thing. Otherwise, I enjoy playing this track and looking at the scenery surrounding it. At number 93, we have SNES Bowser Castle 2, released by Chaos Shout 23, currently in version 1.0. It's a good port with nice visuals. As you might know, there are two SNES Bowser Castle 2s in the pack for whatever reason. However, the MK Dasher version was updated by ZBL and Jasper and put into the pack, and you might have noticed that this version has come first in the ranking. I think this drives better than the other version, but the other version is so much more interesting visually and design-wise too. It's very memorable. I don't think we should have two with the same track on CTGP, and I'd probably get rid of this track as opposed to the other one. At number 92, we have DS Luigi's Mansion, released by Zillspaz, currently in version 1.0C. I'm actually not a fan of the track on the DS, but I like how it's done here a little more. Zelda made a very good port here. I just hope Talk's version gets put in though. At number 91, we have Subspace Factory, released by Charon, currently on version 1.3. I really love the theming with it revolving around Smash Bros. Brawl, since I always loved this story mode in that game as a kid. I think the obstacles are cool, being characters from the game. The design is alright, but not the greatest, with it being confusing at points, and I don't like the shortcut at all. The idea of a secret area is interesting, but when you make it so much faster than the original route, it kinda ruins the track, especially online, but still, it's very impressive for 2013 standards. At number 90, we have Rainbow Road Solar Edition, released by Big Auto 2, currently in version 1.0. An impressive course for the time of its release, and a good port of the 3DS version. I think 2 laps is way too long, and it should definitely be just 1 lap like the original, but it's fun to drive and remains interesting for at least the first lap. At number 89, we have Rush City Run, released by Gred Mega, Connie, and Talk, currently in version Beta 5. Concerning the initial release, this track is quite impressive since the modeling and texturing remains mostly unchanged since 2013. It's not that terrible of a modeling job, and it doesn't rely heavily on Nintendo tracks to supply the texturing, which I think is pretty cool. It's fun to race on, but there are some design issues, mostly the fact that there are trickable ramps leading straight into walls or 90-degree turns, which on a first run would make you lose a ton of time since it's not that intuitive. Blind jumps aren't the best for custom tracks, and sometimes it just feels like there's not enough space for this track. Though I won't take away from the fact that this was impressive in its time, I would just love to see a more modern remake of this track that could play a lot better. At number 88, we have GBA Bowser Castle 4, released by Chaos Shout 23, currently in version 4.1. Another great port by Chaos Shadow 23, looks clean, plays well mostly. I'm just not that interested since it's an old retro that it's very long. This has the opposite problem to the first GBA Bowser Castle. At number 87, we have Wolf Castle Grounds, released by Spy Kid, currently in version 1.0. I think this is just a solid track. I don't think it's amazing, I just think it's good. It flows pretty well, it's got some nice texturing, and while the trick ramps are annoying sometimes, they are passable. This is also difficult in terms of its obstacles, which could work for the track, but I think the fact that it's only at the end makes it feel a little more unfair. At number 86, we have Forest Creek, released by Oaken, currently in version 1.0.5. I feel a little bad having this track so low, but it's so forgettable. Like, yeah, it's designed well, it's got good texturing, it gives good races, it doesn't really have too many issues, just subtle design choices I don't really like, but the theming isn't really interesting, and I always forget this exists. Regardless though, it's still a good track, and I don't want to take away from what Oaken made. At number 85, we have N64 Wario Stadium, released by Zilla, currently in version 1.01. Finally, we got Zilla's version in the pack, and it definitely improves on the older version. Much smoother turns that don't feel as incredibly tight and nicer visuals. I still think there isn't enough variety in the design for how long the track is, which I'd pin more on the original. Zilla did include that off-road boost panel section, but the rest all blends together in my opinion. It's also long. I can accept it more than the other long tracks because it doesn't usually reach 4 minutes, but it's still longer than I personally would like. At number 84, we have Cherry Blossom Garden, released by Renegade Sierra and Chaos Shadow 23, currently in version 2.3. This track is nice and simple, with a good theme and visuals. I do like simple tracks because sometimes when tracks are huge and grand, it can become overwhelming. I'm just not that interested in this track as a whole. The layout doesn't intrigue me, and neither do the visuals all too much. I also think it's a little too long for what it's worth. At number 83, we have Skyline Avenue, released by Spy Kid, currently in version 1.1. Pretty good design that is fun to drive mostly. There's a few choices I'm not too fond of, like the ramp into the turn and all the consecutive ramps, but it plays decently, looks good enough, and I think the design is strong enough. I hope the update gets put in the pack. At number 82, we have Piranha Plant Pipeline, released by Atlas, Spy Kid, and Connie, currently in version 1.3. Piranha Plant Pipeline is a port of 3DS Piranha Plant Slide. This is a really good port of the original. Its visuals are stunning. I'm just not a huge fan of the original design. I'll admit it is fun to drive in some sections, but others, like the Z-turn and the ending section, feel a little tight and not the best driving wise. Other than that though, this is a good track. At number 81, we have Volcanic Skyway 4, released by Big Auto 2, currently in version 4.0. This was also ahead of its time and looks great visually. This is definitely a better looking track from 2012, and it is the best driving Volcanic Skyway for sure. The theme here, like the other Volcanic Skyway, is great. Considering it is the same theme, I'm not all that surprised, and I also think this drives pretty well. I only have a few issues with the track, one being I hate the turn into the cannon, but that's just one turn and doesn't really affect much. And the sky section is also a little awkward to drive since it's a tube for some reason. It should definitely have been flattened out at least a little bit, but I still think this track is great. At number 80, we have GBA Cheep Cheep Island, released by Chaos Shadow 23, currently in version 1.0. Like all the ports Chaos makes, it's good, looks nice, plays well. It also comes down to how much I like the original design, and while I don't think it's perfect, I like the original design for the track. I just think it's too many unnecessary paths. At number 79, we have SNES Donut Plains 3, released by Bear and CBL Gaming, currently in version 1.2. This track is so much better than the other Donut Plains, it's actually funny. This is a well-designed take on the Mario Kart 8 version. While I'm not a huge fan of every design choice, this track really shows that the first Donut Plains are just not necessary to have in the pack. This is fun to race on and looks great. At number 78, we have GC and Luigi Circuit, released by Torin, currently in version RC2. It's a good port, it plays well, it has alright textures, and it's interesting enough with how it loops back onto the track. The design just isn't phenomenal by any means. At number 77, we have Seaside Resort, released by Luigi M, currently in version 1.0. This was very ahead of its time for a 2012 track, and the design is well done. The texturing job isn't that bad other than in the water section. I think that could have looked a lot better, but for a track made in 2012, this really keeps the interest high for most of the way through and drives well. There are a few sections I don't like, such as the water section and the floating ramp part, which can be very inconsistent, but otherwise I think the track is fine, though I'd love to see a modern remake where they make the track look and play better. At number 76, we have Gothic Castle, released by Spy Kid, currently in version 1.3.2. While this track looks really good and has an interesting and dynamic layout, which I do enjoy, there are quite a few design choices that I'm not a fan of, like the beginning ramp totally defeating the purpose of the second turn, the weird long turn square section that feels awkward to drive, and the left turn path that is slower and also feels awkward to drive. Even the straight path is a little odd, just like a really long turn that goes down. Regardless though, this track is interesting with good theming, just some sections could probably be reworked to drive a little better. At number 75, we have Halligan Highway, released by Big Auto 2, currently in version 0.2F. This is an incredibly impressive course considering how old it really is. It was definitely ahead of its time, still looking great and playing well. It also has an interesting theme and flows nicely between every segment that adds more and more interest to the track. Now you may be wondering, if I'm describing it like that, why is it still so low? And the answer is the number of laps. 3 laps of this is very long, and I can kind of understand not going for 1, but this should definitely be 2 laps at most. This would increase this track in the rankings by quite a bit. Other than that though, I still think the track should stay. Despite being in CTGP for so long, it still feels fresh and interesting, which is very impressive. I mean, there's still some design issues, but it's still mostly intuitive and fun to drive. At number 74, we have Festival Town, released by Wii Luigi, currently in version 2.2. This track has a more simple theme to it, and I think Wii Luigi pulls it off pretty well. Just driving in a calming town, good textures, difficulty, shortcuts, and a great length to do it all. What mainly concerns me here are some of the design choices he makes. Mostly the road bending quickly up and down can be awkward to drive on. I'm also not a fan of the ramp into the last turn, and it has some issues when it comes to flowing between segments, but other than that, it's a solid track. Not one I think is phenomenal, but a nice one that I enjoy racing on from time to time. At number 73, we have GBA Bowser Castle 2, released by Chaos Shadow 23, currently in version 2.1. This is a great port of a more interesting Bowser Castle from the Game Boy Advanced. It drives alright, is textured well, has good optical shortcuts. Yeah, not much else to say. At number 72, we have Big Express City, released by LGMB, currently in version 1.5 Fix 2. This track is insane. I feel bad for having it this low, but it's just way too complicated. It's non-intuitive. But I have massive respect for LGMB for making this. It's clear a lot of time went into it, and it's fun to play. But it can become very confusing, and I also think the nighttime version is better. At number 71, we have Pipe Underworld, released by Big Auto 2, and Chaos Shadow 23, currently in version 2.3. I think this track looks good and is a faithful remake of the original, though it's not the most fun to drive, mostly because of the number of cannons and how high they shoot you sometimes. I personally believe Mega Kart 69's remake flows a lot better and looks better than this remake, so I think it should be replaced. That's just my opinion. This track is still really good regardless, especially for a 2015 track, but I feel like it could have been a lot better drivability wise. At number 70, we have GCN Bowser's Castle, released by Bayolets, currently in version 3.4. This track is a really good port that looks nice and functions well, but I have quite a few issues with its drivability, like the tight turns, how it feels to drive up and down the staircases or on the bridge, and that shortcut being unnecessarily difficult. Yes, most of these problems are in the original design, but I feel like maybe with a little shifting it could be drastically improved. Also, I'd probably suggest being replace this with Talk's version as it looks a little better. I think it still plays the same unfortunately, but regardless they're both strong tracks. At number 69, we have GBA Cheeseland, released by Chaos Shadow 23, currently in version 2.0. Say it with me, a good port that looks nice. I like the design enough, it's an old retro, cool theming, I hope a Wii U version gets made. At number 68, we have DKR Star City, released by Mewtwo 2000, currently in version 1.1. This track, in contrast to the other Diddy Kong Racing tracks in the pack, work really well and managed to keep interest high throughout the track. It's got good enough textures, the theming is interesting but makes sense, and it flows and drives pretty well. This is just DKR Jungle Falls with that extra bit of interest. Still not the most dynamic and interesting track I've seen, but still, it works. And number 67, we have GCN Dry Desert, released by Redefine H. Lorenzi, currently in version Alpha 3. This is a Go port that plays well. I honestly like driving this course even though the pokies can be a little infuriating and there's a lot of off-road. It can give off pretty cool races, but at the end of the day, it's a retro track and doesn't capture my interest all too much. At number 66, we have GCN Mushroom Bridge, released by Talk, currently in version 1.4. I actually think this is a better port, more so than the majority of the others in this pack, because I was not a fan of the original Mushroom Bridge, but I actually think it's much better here. The Wiggler car is a really cool idea, and the track flows well. I'm not a fan of how it ends with the boost panels on the arches, but other than that, I think Talk did a really good job here, as to be expected. At number 65, we have Volcanic Valley, released by Mario Kart 69, currently in version 2.3. This track is a very interesting theme where it mostly revolves around looping back onto itself. I always thought that idea was interesting and could create some really cool ideas. I also think that this track has the perfect length, and while maybe not for the concepts, I still find this to be a fun track to play. There are a few design choices that I'm not a huge fan of. For one, the really long turn I don't enjoy driving, and some of the ramps feel blind. Also, the texturing job is good, but could probably be a little better. I don't have too many problems with this track though. I think it was a good idea executed well. At number 64, we have N64 Choco Mountain, released by Yoshi Dude 4 and Funky Dude 15, currently in version 2.3. Originally, when I wrote the script, I said that this version should replace the old one, and I'm glad it happened. Just a very solid remake of the original that plays and looks great. I wasn't a huge fan of the original since it took so long to complete with very long straights, but this is a little more bearable. At number 63, we have CTR Blizzard Bluff, released by Mr. E99, currently in version 1.0. I don't have a lot to say on the track. I never played Crash Team Racing, but this is pretty good. Great theming, good textures, a really good length for the track. What I don't enjoy is how bumpy the track is, most of the tricks, and how heavy the snow is. At number 62, we have Tropical Factory, released by Sneaky, currently in version 1.4. I think this is a well-designed track with a solid theme and good textures. It also has good obstacles and is fun to race on. I do have a few problems with it, though only pertaining to specific sections. I'm mostly not a fan of the section with all the crates because the number feels excessive and it's not that fun to drive. I also think the long turns are a little too long, but most of the other sections I think are either passable or I like driving them, so I still think this is a well-designed track. At number 61, we have SNES Bowser Castle 2, released by MK Dasher, currently in version 1.9. Finally, this update is in the pack. I was so sick and tired of the old SNES Bowser Castle 2. The visuals look stunning and it finally drives like a functional track. I'm still not huge on the original design, and I definitely don't want to see two SNES Bowser Castle 2s in the pack. Why are there still two SNES Bowser Castle 2s in the pack? We do not need two. At number 60, we have Jungle Ruins, released by Mr. E99, currently in version 1.0. So this is one of Mr. E's older tracks, and I like the design of it. It's pretty clean and fun to drive. Not perfect by any means, but I find it very enjoyable. I think this definitely needs a visual overhaul though, as it's looking a little dated, and I think Mr. E is capable of making this look stunning. At number 59, we have Volcanic Pipe Yard, released by Chaos Shadow 23, currently in version 3.1. I'm confused why this one is still in the pack. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad. It can be fun to drive and has decent enough visuals, but considering this track is a remake on an older track, and there has been a remake of this track that's already in the pack, it feels strange to have both of them in CTGP, considering they are both very similar. And I put this one lower because it feels a little more awkward to drive, and also I don't like the shortcut as much. So, I don't know. I think maybe this version should be replaced for a different track entirely. It's not bad by any means, it just feels redundant. At number 58, we have Unfinished Mario Circuit, released by Gyu, currently in version 2.0 hotfix. This is the newest track to the pack at the time of recording, and it's good. The theme is amazing, and the visuals are interesting to look at. I'd say this doesn't feel much like the newest track. The layout isn't all too exciting, but it's a very nice idea, and it works good enough to make it a very solid track to race on. At number 57, we have Final Grounds, released by Mario Kart 69, currently in version 2.2. This track was interesting when it first came out. I remember the little bit of controversy since it took elements from his other tracks and just put them together, but honestly I think this flows nicely. It has good shortcuts, a good design, great theming, good ideas, and good texturing. There's a few issues I have though, like some of the turns can be a bit off. Going through the door I don't enjoy, even though that was removed in a later version, and some of the sections feel lackluster or don't have the greatest texturing. I do like this track though, it creates very interesting competitive races. At number 56, we have Sunset Forest, released by PC Freak, Redefine Luigi 45000 VR, currently in version 1.0. I think the remake is good, staying true to the original, but making it look and play a lot nicer. I don't think it's the most interesting though, and the one blind turn would make any new player go straight into the off-road, which is bad design-wise. Otherwise though, I think it's a nice and simple track. At number 55, we have Lost Fortress, released by Mario Kart 69, currently in version 3.0. This has a really good design and it looks alright. This is very much a time trial course. It's fun to play, but would I call this a good track overall? Well, yes, I just want to call it the best. It's definitely more so for the single player experience, but it has alright shortcuts, a good design, other than a few problems, and has a great theme. At number 54, we have Abyssal Ruins, made by Chaos Shadow 23, currently in version 2.0. Despite being a 6-year-old track, this actually plays really well. It's got good texturing, shortcuts, and a good theme and layout. What kills this track is its tricks and sticky road. Most of them feel unsatisfying or awkward, especially the first ramp that always gets skipped over, but there was a 2020 update that fixes most of the big issues, so hopefully it gets added in the next update. At number 53, we have Sky Shrine, created by Chaos Shadow 23, currently in version 1.1. This one is odd for sure, at least to me. I like the theming and the texturing job here, and this track does feel fun to drive. The only thing that I'm not a huge fan of is how the entire track is surrounded by wall basically. It definitely makes the track feel less open. I understand the design choice for some sections, but for others I feel like it should open up a little bit. I also feel it's a bit forgettable, but overall a good track from 2016. At number 52, we have Flying Kingdom, released by Spy Kid, currently in version 1.2. The track looks visually stunning and has some really cool ideas. Despite not really having any scenery, the background is interesting and makes up for it. This is wonderful theming with changing segments and new ideas presented to you constantly. But I have this a little lower since drivability is still an issue here. Tight corners, sudden turns, a roof that's a little too close, some bumpy turns, and not all that amazing of shortcuts. Nonetheless, this is still very impressive. At number 51, we have Dragon Knight's Island, released by Such T93A and Redefy, currently in beta. The track is good. I really like the Pokemon objects as they're cool and original. It also has a decent layout with good texturing and shortcuts, and it's mostly intuitive. The only changes I'd make is I'm not a huge fan of the downhill section since it's not really that fun or consistent to drive, and the turns afterwards are awkward. At number 50, we have Thwomp Swamp, released by Mr. E99, currently in version 1.0D. While I do think the track is good and fun to drive, I don't think it's anything amazing. This is alright theming, I don't love it, but I don't think it's bad. It has a good design, though I think the trees at the end are a little too big, and the section with the boost pads can feel a little awkward to drive. The texturing is pretty good. At number 49, we have Shadow Woods, released by Sneaky, currently in version 1.2. Yeah, the track drives well and looks great, it just feels really forgettable. Also, the shortcut is like the entire track, which I found a little weird, but it does look beautiful, and while I don't think it is amazing, it still shows how crazily consistent Sneaky is with his tracks. At number 48, we have GCN Sherbet Land, released by Talk, currently in version 3.1. While I'm not a huge fan of the original, I can't take away from this remake. It plays well in Mario Kart Wii. Good obstacles, it looks great, and it can give interesting races. This definitely looks like Nintendo made it. At number 47, we have Jungle Jamble, released by Yoshi86 Up and Torin, currently in version 1 CTGP. Despite being so simple, the grass looks amazing and the whole track, even without many background elements, looks really good. This is a little bit of a guilty pleasure as the track is quite simple, but it works well, it's fun to drive, so I have it here. At number 46, we have Daisy Hillside, released by Atlas, currently in version 1.7F. This is a port of 3DS Daisy Hills, and I enjoy the track. It's got good textures, it's fun to race on, for the most part, good and unique objects like the sheep. I like the track, but it's very forgettable, and I honestly don't find myself wanting to play it all that much. It's a good course, but it's hard for me to give credit to retros over completely custom tracks. I'm also not a huge fan of how the cannons work, but that's just me. At number 45, we have Spike Desert, released by Spy Kid, Peepo 2000, and Sneaky, currently in version 2.1. Sneaky remade this track beautifully. Now it looks a lot nicer and more lively. It drives pretty well, though I think the mushroom should have been moved farther back. I think this is mostly just a solid track, but I have a few issues, mostly with the theming. I personally don't like desert tracks all too much, mostly because they always look like Dry Ruins or Desert Hills, and I'm not massively in love with the design. I still think it's solid though. At number 44, we have Nostalgic Bowser's Castle, released by Omonimo747, currently in version 2.1b. This track has aged pretty well, mostly because its theme is supposed to be nostalgic, and the texturing job is a little old, though I personally have little issue with it. This track is fun to drive, and while I don't think the theming is all too interesting, I still think this track is impressive, especially for the time of its release. I have a few issues with the design, but most of that was solved in an update released in 2016, which surprisingly still hasn't been added to CTGP, and I'm not sure why. Regardless though, it's a solid old track. At number 43, we have Cool Castle Canyon, released by Sneaky, currently in version 1.0. It's hard to believe this track was released in 2016. Sneaky was definitely ahead of his time. The modeling here is amazing, the theming is good, the textures could probably use a bit of tweaking to feel more modern and fresh. This is fun to race on, excluding a few sections that tilt a little too much I feel like, and there are good shortcuts to the track. It also has interesting enough background elements and a unique theme to it that doesn't resemble a regular track, which is cool. Castle Canyon, yeah, not the best or most fun, but solid. At number 42, we have N64 Calamari Desert, released by Sneaky, currently in version 1.0. While I'm not a huge fan of the original design, I gotta admit, this port is good. Really good. Great actually, amazing port. Of course Sneaky made it. This track looks stunning visually, plays good driving wise for the most part, and has nice shortcuts. While it's still a retro track that I'm not too fond of, I have to give Sneaky the props he deserves. He made it a lot more enjoyable than the original was. At number 41, we have Windmill Village, released by Chaos Shadow 23, currently in version 3.1. I've always been a big fan of this track. I think the design was simple and strong, and that the track looked pretty good visually. Chaos has always been a creator that doesn't always go all out on tracks, but creates really good designs. While I do enjoy driving the track mostly, I will admit I don't like the trick ramp used to go into the water. I think you could have just made a trick road that wouldn't slow you down at all. I also feel the theming is a little lackluster and the background is a little empty. I still enjoy playing the track though. At number 40, we have Toad Raceway, released by Torin, currently in version 1.4. Toad Raceway is a port of 3DS Toad Circuit, and I think this is a really good port. It looks great and it drives well. I like the original of this track too, but the shortcut is a little too easy and saves a lot of time, so that's why it's not any higher on the rankings. This should probably be replaced with Breeze Remake as well. At number 39, we have Woohoo Mountain, released by Funky Dude 15, Wexo, Sneaky, and Such T93A, currently in version Beta 3. This is a port of 3DS MKWii, and it's a good port. It played well on the 3DS, and it plays well here. It also makes changes to make this more enjoyable, specifically the ending section actually being playable with its road. While some parts aren't the greatest, I don't mind it all too much. This is just a solid track. At number 38, we have Infernal Pipe Yard, released by Chaos Shadow 23, currently in version 1.0. This is a good track. I think the texturings are good enough here, and I really like the design, though it could probably be shortened a bit to be even better. It's got good shortcuts, enough obstacles, a really good theming, and interesting changing segments. Just a solid track that can be fun to race on despite being old. At number 37, we have Autumn Leaves Way, released by Spy Cannon Redefy, currently in version 2.1. Ah yes, a remake of the original. Anyways, this track is great. Really good visuals, nice layout, interesting ideas, really good theming. The main problem dragging this track down is how the boardwalk section drives. It's not intuitive, especially that one turn you have to make while going up and tricking. I'm also not a fan of the massive turns or some of the other ramps. Other than that though, this is definitely a notable track. I do like the original for being so simple and nice to drive, but this version is definitely better. At number 36, we have Warp Pipe Island, released by Luke Chandler, currently in version 1.02. I think this is a really good take on the Mario Kart DS beta track, though it is more so a take of a pre-existing port of that track, which is a little confusing. But regardless, this track looks nice, plays pretty well, and is the perfect length in my opinion. It switches up the visuals so the track remains interesting the whole way through, and I admire the effort put into the track. I don't think it's perfect. Driving in the pipes specifically is a little bit of a hassle, and you are driving through a lot of pipes, but I still think this track is mostly fun to drive. At number 35, we have GBA Mario Circuit, released by Mr. E99, currently in version 1.1. I'm really glad Mr. E decided to create a port of the Mario Kart 8 version rather than the original, since the original wasn't all too interesting. This, on the other hand, is fun to play and has cool concepts. It drives pretty well. My only problem is the textures feel a little washed out for some reason, and some turns can still feel really tight. Regardless, it's still a very good effort. At number 34, we have Big Nature City, released by LGMB, currently in version 1.0. LGMB back with another great track. The textures are nice and the layout is solid. It's clear that a lot of time was spent into the track as well, and I enjoy playing it. My two problems were the weather changes are too sudden, which I know there's probably not much you can do about it, and the split path at the end I'm not a huge fan of. The split path and technically the weather changes were both fixed in later versions. The track is actually in version 2.3 currently and has had countless updates, just being never added them to the pack, which is unfortunate. At number 33, we have White Garden, released by SpyKid and Redefy, currently in version 2.5. This track looks amazing visually and is a lot better than the original. It feels fun to drive and it flows from section to section pretty well. My concerns mostly revolve around how many 180-degree turns there are and how sometimes they don't feel the smoothest. Also, the top section can be a little difficult to pull off smoothly, but otherwise I think the remake was very well done. At number 32, we have SNES Mario Circuit 2, released by Nile Black, currently in version 1.4. While this is rather basic visually, I feel like the design works really well in Mario Kart Wii and often gives fun races. I love driving the track, it's a really good port. At number 31, we have DS Waluigi Pinball, released by Yoshi Dude 4 and Turbo Yoshi, currently in version 4.1. Really good port, looks great, functions well, definitely the best port of this track. There's a few design choices in the original I don't really like, but nevertheless, this works well in the Wii. At number 30, we have Neo Koopa City, released by Atlas, currently in version 2.1. Neo Koopa City is a port of 3DS Neo Bowser City, and I've never liked Neo Bowser City. I hated it on the 3DS and the Wii U. Here though, it plays very well. This looks great and drives good too. Still not my favorite design-wise, but regardless, still a very good port. I would like to see a Wii U version of the track. There isn't a huge difference, but the ending has a much nicer off-road cut compared to what it has now. At number 29, we have Color Circuit, released by Oaken and Rhino Rocks, currently in version 1.1.1. I have immense respect for this track because it replaced Color Wonderland, but on its own, it's a good custom track. The visuals are unique and makes this track stand out. This also has a nice, simple, good layout with shortcuts. It also has an interesting enough background. My only concern is that ending is a little awkward to drive when it gets up onto its side. Considering this is such a short track as well, it feels like it negatively impacts the whole track a lot more. At number 28, we have Underground Sky, released by Karon and EC2 Joshi, currently in version 1.4. I'm a big fan of the modern visuals this track has. It's a really good remake, and I like the theming. Karon is definitely talented at creating tracks, especially his newer ones. There are a few things I'm not a huge fan of though, like the tight turns, the cannons sometimes shooting you very high, and the other turns that you were supposed to skip. I still think this track is very well done though. At number 27, we have Dawn Township, released by Jiu, currently in version 2.5. This is a really good track. It's got incredible theming, interesting ideas, really good textures, and obstacles throughout the track. I enjoy playing it, but to me personally, it feels very forgettable. I'm not sure why, considering the track is so good, but I always forget this track is in the pack. I also think some of the sections aren't the best to drive personally, like the rocks that you can just keep tricking on at the end. There was a visual update to the track and it makes the track look even better than it already does. Hopefully that gets added soon. At number 26, we have Alpine Peak, released by Mr. E99, currently in version 1.1. I've always been a fan of Mr. E, and this was one of my favorites from him. Phenomenal scenery around the track, really good textures, and the track as a whole looks very nice. It plays well too, but not always. Some of the bumpiness is a little annoying, and the ramps with lots of air can be not so fun, but the latter half, especially of this course, I find really good. At number 25, we have Jiu Village, released by Jiu, currently in version 1.1F. A very solid new addition with nice visuals and a pretty good design. I don't have too much to say on it, just very solid. The only issues I have are from how intuitive it is, as sometimes the amount of pathways and dead ends can be unclear to a person playing the track for the first time, but it's easy to pick up after a while. At number 24, we have Unnamed Valley, released by Psy and Such T93A, currently in version 2.1. This remake is absolutely stunning visually, and I want to give props to Such T for making it look as nice and as unique as it does. Even without it, I like the design of the original. I think it's a simple track that plays well, as opposed to some of the other short tracks in the pack that I think are alright or nothing special. There's only one design problem, and that's the track doesn't feel too open, which I can understand, but it's very problematic for the one section at the end with the two 180-degree turns, as they feel almost impossible to do. It's not that huge of an issue since you can go over the off-road anyway, but that could also be considered a design issue. If Such T did fix the off-road, I think he would also have to fix the spacing at the end so you can actually drive through it without it feeling too awkward. I still think this track is great though, and it's fun to drive. At number 23, we have Marble Towers, released by Sneaky, currently in version 1.3a. Who would have expected that Sneaky released a good track? Marble Towers, just another great course Sneaky made. The theme is super creative, great textures, and the track immerses you the whole way through. The design is good, I'm just not a fan of the ending section and how it flows from segment to segment sometimes. Really good track though. At number 22, we have Twin Peaks, released by Such T93A, currently in version 1.6. To me, Twin Peaks has always been an alright track, but once the impressive visuals came in, it was clear that this was more than just decent. This is mostly fun to drive, looks amazing, and has a good theme to the whole track. It never feels boring despite being such a long track, and I commend Such T for it. However, I do have a few issues, which lowers the whole experience in my eyes. Mainly the speed of the train can be a bit jarring. Also, I don't really enjoy driving the uphill section because it's rather blind. Other than that though, the track is very impressive. At number 21, we have Concord Town, released by Remy in the Sky, currently in version 4.0. This track gets a lot of things right, especially considering the current version in CTGP was made in 2014. It has a really good design and layout with decent shortcuts and an all-around good theme, though it's definitely inspired by Delfino Square. It takes some of the good elements from the regular tracks, like the drawbridge. The only problems, the texturing at points is overall good but at points seems dated, and there's drivability issues, mainly the bridge that doesn't move. At number 20, we have DS Mario Circuit, released by ZBL Gaming, currently in version 3.61. I'd say this is a good update to the last version of the pack. The visuals are much more interesting, and I like all the design tweaks that ZBL made to the track. I'm a fan of the original on the DS, though I also think some of the turns are too tight. Other than that though, this remake is very solid. At number 19, we have Dragon Burial Grounds, released by Mario Kart DS, currently in version 2.3. This track came so far out of left field and is very impressive. Mario Kart DS before this track never had another track quite to the level of immense quality that this one has. It's got amazing theming, a fun layout, great textures and ideas, good shortcuts, and I really like the alligator mouth section. The only issues that this track has are drivability issues, like the staircase at the beginning actually having the KCL go up and down, which is a little annoying, and then the ramp turn part can be a little weird to try and drive through sometimes. Other than that though, the track is really good. At number 18, we have DS Airship Fortress, released by Sneaky, currently in version 1.3. This is just a solid remake. Sneaky recreated the items very well. He made the visuals look stunning, and this is no doubt the best port of this track. It's designed by Nintendo, so it makes sense that it's designed so well. The spiral is still not the greatest from the original, but it's fine. At number 17, we have Lava Lake, released by Jor's MKW, currently in version 2.1. I've severely underrated this track since its inclusion in CTGP. I always thought that it was a nice track but nothing groundbreaking, but the more I think about it, the more I really like the design here. The theming is amazing and the visuals look really nice, and this track also plays well in the design department. A lot of interesting ideas, smooth turns, good flow from segment to segment, great shortcuts, just an all-around good track. And it's not a 10 out of 10 because still, I honestly find the track to be a little forgettable, with a few design choices I'm not too huge on. At number 16, we have Sahara Hideout, released by ZBL Gaming, Jasper, and Golden RS, currently in version 2.19 Nether. This track is just fun to drive mostly. I really like the texturing job done here, as I think the track looks absolutely beautiful, and the theme is clever, being inspired by the original Strobent's desert tracks. What I like most about this is how it captures the complexity that both the Strobent's deserts have, without sacrificing its intuitiveness and difficulty in terms of figuring out where to go, which is what I really enjoy. A person who has never played this track before could probably go through the entire track without too much trouble. The only part I'm not too fond of is the ending section with all the jumping ramps. It is a little difficult to know where exactly you're supposed to go, but really this track is great, and I hope more of ZBL and Jasper's tracks get added to CTGP. At number 15, we have Yoshi's Woolly Raceway, released by Aiden190903 and Anoob, currently in version 1.1.1. Another new track to the pack, and I like it. It's not anything grand or phenomenal, but it has an interesting theme and understands that some tracks should be a little more simplistic. I think it drives very well other than a few design issues like some unexpected turns and some surfaces that aren't trickable, which should be, but I think this track emulates a normal Nintendo course very well and is fun to play online. At number 14, we have Glimmer Express Trains, released by Sneaky, currently in version 1.1, a phenomenal custom track with a really good theme and wonderful execution. The design is great, the visuals are good, it has a decent amount of challenge to the whole course, it looks nothing like any regular track and has its own ideas implemented throughout. Despite being a very long course, it manages to keep interest high throughout the entirety of the track. It was ahead of its time for sure. It has good shortcuts, though I'm not really a fan of the one where you go through the wall. And other than a few small sections, this track drives really well. Another amazing custom track by Sneaky. At number 13, we have DS Bowser Castle, released by Sneaky, currently in version 1.1a. Another Sneaky remake. Who would have thought that it'd be good? You can't ask for a better version of DS Bowser Castle. It looks great and plays exactly as it does on the DS. Still not my favorite in its design, but that's due to the original rather than what Sneaky has done. Amazing work. At number 12, we have Koopa Shell Pipeland, released by Mr. E99, currently in version 1.1. This was a very strong new addition to the pack. The theming here is pretty interesting, along with a nice solid fun design. The visuals, while a little washed out, are still very good, and the track is a joy to drive most of the time. I do think some of the turns inside the pipe sections are too tight and a little awkward, but I still think this was a very strong effort from Mr. E. At number 11, we have Jungle Cliff, released by Wine and Kichi 1996, currently in version RC2. This track also gets a lot of things right, as I admire the design of the course and how it flows so smoothly between section and section, with enough obstacles and differentiation in the visuals to make things interesting. The only thing holding this track down from being better than it already is the lackluster background and the texturing being maybe a little more bland than it should be. I have always admired this track though, and I love how it's so fun to drive and simple yet dynamic, so that's why I have it so high. Maybe a visual overhaul might make this my favorite track of all time, who knows. At number 10, I have Cave Island, released by Wii Luigi and Spy Kid, currently in version 2.2. This might seem like a crazy high spot considering that I put this over insanely detailed and interesting tracks, but I enjoy it. It's nice and simple, perfect length, interesting enough visuals, drives really well, and has good shortcuts. I enjoy playing this one a lot. I only didn't give it perfect because it is rather basic, and some elements could have been designed better, like the cannon and the shortcut after it. At number 9, I have Plant Forest, released by 9paran, currently a version 1.0. I really like this track. The visuals are its strong suit. Everything looks really nice with good shadows, textures, and theming. I also like the layout, though some might say there's too much grass around, and I agree to a certain extent. It's fun to drive. I like playing the track when it gets picked. Not really much else to say for it. At number 8, we have Luncheon Tour, released by Luke Chandler, currently in version 1.13. Now, even though I'm not too keen on the visuals, they totally make sense since it was recreating the world from Super Mario Odyssey. So I actually do like the visuals and the background elements. This is a very creative track with phenomenal theming and a good design too. Basing a track off a world but still having that free range to make the track feel like an actual course is really smart, and I wish Luke Chandler would make a few more tracks similar to how he made this one. There's a few design elements I don't enjoy. They aren't outright bad, but not the most fun to drive, but other than that, this track is very solid and impressive. At number 7, we have Crystal Plains, released by Sneaky, currently in version 1.1. This track is insane. It's got phenomenal theming, interesting objects, a great layout, really good textures, and is fun to drive, for the most part. The only thing I dislike about the track is the tricks and the long turn after the found, as I don't enjoy how it drives. Other than that though, the track is incredibly impressive and shows how amazing Sneaky can be when he's making his tracks. They're always bold and grand with wonderful themes, and he's definitely one of the best custom track creators. At number 6, I have Honeybee Hideout, released by Taco Josh, currently in version 1.1.1. So this is a track I covered on my channel in a CT review episode prior to its inclusion in CTGP, and I'm not surprised it got added. I did talk about why I loved the track in that episode, so I'm not going to reiterate what I said. It's still really good visually and design-wise, but I do think there are a few drivability issues, mainly with how tight some turns can be, but other than that, still a great custom track, and I can't wait to see what Taco Josh has in store next. At number 5, I have Seaside Circuit, released by Super Blooper Curio, currently in version Beta 3 Night. Okay, before you dislike and complain in the comments, let me explain myself. I love this track. This is incredibly fun to race on and plays very well online. This track doesn't get a perfect score only because the texturing is a little dated. Otherwise, this would have definitely been a perfect track in my eyes. I love playing it, and I know I didn't help my case and you guys are staring at the number 5, but please just let it be. At number 4, we have GBA Lakeside Park, released by Chaos Shadow 23, currently in version 3.0. A really good port that looks good and drives very well. Good shortcuts, feels like a Mario Kart Wii track, definitely my favorite from the GBA. At number 3, we have CTR Cortex Castle, released by Mr. E99, currently in version 1.0. This track works very well in Mario Kart Wii. I really love the theming of the track, the layout and design, the difficulty, the interesting objects, the texturing for sure, and it's fun to drive through most of it except for the staircase section. It has nice background elements and scenery, and I really like how the sky looks in this track. It just feels so much like a Mario Kart Wii track, and that feeling never goes away here. At number 2, we have New Moon Manor, released by Sneaky, currently in version 1.1. Insane. Absolutely insane. Phenomenal theming and texturing. Amazing ideas like the disappearing Goobas and the twirling rooms. This flows very well from section to section. Interest is always high here. It drives very well as a track. This definitely deserves a 10 out of 10. While I don't enjoy the part where you're falling into the water, I don't want that to take away from how amazing this track is. I don't know how Sneaky manages to be so good at making custom tracks, and in every department too. He's incredibly creative and can perfect every single element of track creation, like the models, visuals, and custom objects. This track is just great. Alright, and coming in at the number 1 spot for my favorite track in CTGP, it has to go to Lunar Lights, released by Sneaky, currently in version 1.0. I remember when Troy called this the number 1 custom track in that video like 2 years ago I think, and yep, I'm basic. This track looks amazing, plays insanely well, has good shortcuts, a great theme, and is fun to drive. It really goes above and beyond. I can't ask much more from this track. It plays really well, and it gives fun races when you're online. Drivability is not sacrificed significantly anywhere on the track, so of course it gets a 10 out of 10. Sneaky's best for sure. If you watched through the entire video, I'm very impressed. Good job. This video took a long time to make, so a like and a sub would be appreciated. Thanks for sticking around, and peace out.